and that was actually the biggest game changer for me in my morning routine journey. Trust me, it was the one thing that actually helped me to go from attempts to actually successful implementation. And it's simple as it sounds, it's just about, this video is all about how to start your morning routine and how to actually start your morning routine. Because I've been there multiple times and I tried a lot of times to, get it going and be consistent. But then after a couple mornings, I was like, screw this. I want to snooze the alarm and just continue sleeping. But today I will share 5 tips that I learned that actually helped me so much to be consistent and that helped me to build a morning routine that has lasted me over almost 2 years now. Every single day I wake up in the morning and just do my thing, and that is really, really great. So yeah, 5 tips on that. Stay tuned. Let's dive into it. Before diving into the 5 tips, I quickly want to share my thoughts on why I think everyone should have a morning routine in place. And that is simply because if you want to get things done, you need to be consistent. It is much more important to do something every day for a little bit consistently rather than doing a lot inconsistently. But in order to be consistent, you need stability and as little distractions as possible. And therefore, it is important that you take hours, maybe 1 or 2 hours out of the evening or afternoon of your day and put them to the morning at the start of the day. That is because the time in the afternoon or the evening or at the end of the day in general has way, way more distractions than the morning. Maybe you want to go to the gym or you want to do groceries, want to watch Netflix. You have all those things that you do typically in the afternoon after work or whatever you want to do. And if you're trying to get something done, it is very, very hard to schedule one specific time slot in the evening or the end of the day because there are simply so many distractions everywhere. That is the overall reason. Just being more consistent and having the time to do it undisturbed in the morning compared to the evening. The second thing that I want to talk about before I dive into the 5 tips is that you should consider why you actually want to start a morning routine and to remember to make it your own. Because habits that we create, they shouldn't be a burden for you, but they should enhance your life and make it easier. So they should not feel like pressure or, like a prison that you create for yourself. Because maybe you are not the type of person that wants to get up at 5 a.m. and, run a half marathon and then plunge in an ice bath and then, do all those fancy, crazy things that I see on social media in recent times. But maybe it's just about, waking up 1 hour earlier and just have some dedicated time for yourself before you head out. Maybe that's already it. And, once you master that, you can always take it to the next level and the next level, whatever you're comfortable with. It's just very important that before you dive into that journey, understand what you want to achieve with it and then take the steps that will get you there as well. Okay, great. So hopefully you now have a brief idea of when you want to start your morning routine. So we can actually dive into the 5 tips. And I will start with tip 1. But make sure that you watch until the end because I put my game changer tip that really made me absolutely consistent with my morning routine for over 2 years now to the very end, to tip 5. Okay, let's start off with tip 1. My first tip is to set your expectations because building a new habit can always take more time and energy than we first anticipate. And I think it is always much more easy to understand what your journey will be like if you kind of set your expectations straight and you maybe have a better idea of what you're going to do. And on average, building a new habit takes around 66 days. And of course, that can be quicker for some people. Maybe it takes longer for other people, depending on who you are, how fast you learn, what your habit is, and so on. But it takes on average 66 days. And that is something most people don't really consider. They would hope for having immediate effects maybe after 2 or 3 days, or maybe even 2 weeks, but it's just not like that. It just takes a little bit more time, patience, and also a little bit more energy than most people think. To outline that journey a little bit more precisely, Robin Sharma, the author of the 5 a.m. Club, I will quickly get the book. You have probably heard about this. 15 million copies sold. I don't think it's a tip anymore. But yeah, I read this book like three years ago, which then transitioned me into starting my whole morning journey. And when it comes about setting expectations, this book really helped me because they say that those first 66 days that it takes to form a habit can actually be divided into 3 stages. And the first stage are basically the first 22 days, which is called the destruction phase. And yes, the name is a bit scary, but it is also one of the hardest stages to go through, which means that you need a lot of energy in order to rewrite your old habits. In the book, he writes that it basically can be compared to a rocket launch situation. That at the beginning of a rocket launch, you need a lot of fuel, which in our case will then be motivation and energy, in order to, get out of the stratosphere. And then once you start gliding, it becomes easier and easier and you need less fuel. So consider the first stage as one of the most intense stages when it comes to how much energy it needs. But the great thing about stage 1 and the first 22 days is that you usually have a very high motivation, because when you're a little bit like me, then you of course get excited about the idea of becoming this morning person and doing all those great things in the morning and blah blah. So maybe your motivation is great, and that actually helps us through the first stage to kind of like ease the pain a bit. So after you have made it through the first 22 days, the destruction phase, you actually come into the second stage, which is now called the installation phase. Unfortunately though, things don't get really easier in stage 2. And the reason for that is basically because you have been doing that now for 22 days. Your new morning routine, 22 days of getting up early, pushing yourself out of bed, taking a lot of energy for that. So after 22 days, you may forget why you started initially in the first stage. And that is actually the stage that most people quit in, because it's this combination of low motivation, not seeing the results, still needing a lot of energy and having a lot of time invested already, where you just feel like, this is not going anywhere and this is not the results that I expected. I've been doing this for 3 weeks now and all that. The second stage, the installation phase, how Robin calls it in his book, is actually one of the most challenging one, because it's just so chaotic. And I was really able to relate to that in my journey, because I remember that after 3 weeks, I was really just constantly tired. I don't remember why I started this. And I was really close to giving up. But luckily, because I've embraced my first tip, which is about setting my expectations, I knew that good things will follow. But once you have completed the additional 22 days, so basically stage 2, the installation phase, so we are now 44 days in, you actually start feeling a little bit of a change, like your body is getting used to getting up early. Things start to happen more automatically, things are getting easier, and that is because your body is just getting used to the new habit, and all of a sudden things start falling into place. Maybe you already wake up before the alarm goes and you just realize that the new habit is now becoming your body's new normal, and that's actually where you can earn all the fruits of your labor. And remember, it can take longer than 44 days, but I also realized that around day 50, and I kept a journal throughout that time just to really be able to reflect on what's going on and so on, I really started to feel like, okay, this is now what I expected it to feel like after already 2 or 3 days. So bottom line, tip 1, set your expectations. It will take longer than you think and more energy. But when you know exactly in what stage you will be in, you will know exactly what you have in front. And trust me, it will be worth it if you just stick to it and be consistent over time. The second tip on how to actually be consistent with your morning routine is also another tip that I took from the 5 a.m. club. And it's about starting your day with a physical activity. And in the book, it is explained that you should start your day according to the 20-20-20 formula, which basically means that you split up 1 hour or 60 minutes of your morning into 3 different segments where you do one dedicated thing. The first 20 minutes, for example, should be a physical activity where you just activate your body. The second step is where you then, reflect and meditate or journal. And then the last 20 minutes should be used in order to grow, whatever you define growing as. Maybe you want to learn a new skill or something like that. What I now learned in the past 2 years in my morning routine is that I really, really benefit from having a physical activity right when I get up. And, for me, it doesn't have to be a super intense workout or a super heavy gym session or whatever. It can also be depending on how I feel on that day. But it's usually just for me to spend 20 minutes in order to activate my body. If that's going for a run, just for a walk with my dog, if I go to the gym, if I do maybe a home workout session, whatever it is, just to, get the body activated. And what that does for me is that it basically just blows the tiredness that you might feel after getting up out of your body and just really makes you start your day. So now the third tip is to remove any friction that you might have that prevents you from starting your morning routine. So you should make it as easy as possible for you to be able to be consistent. And I mentioned the role of motivation like very briefly in the first tip, but you have to really manage your motivation, because motivation is not what gets you through the first 66 days of starting a new habit. So at one point, you need to be able to replace motivation with actual discipline. And in order to do that, in order to keep the motivation at a moderate level throughout that journey, you should make it as easy as possible to fulfill the goals that you set for yourself. For example, if your goal is now to wake up at 5 a.m. and you usually woke up at 7 a.m. before, going from 7 a.m. to 5 a.m. in one night is a big jump. So in order to not lose your motivation directly on the first day, I would suggest to make it as easy as possible to ease into your routine. So instead of waking up at 5 a.m. on the first morning, maybe consider, trying 6:30. And then, a week after you can try 6 and so on. And so with every day you get closer to the 5 a.m. goal, and it will be much easier for you to be consistent. Also, what I mentioned in tip 2 is the workout. You don't need to make a super heavy workout, but just do something that you enjoy so that it's easy for you to get up. Because we want to prevent that the first thought in the morning when you wake up is like, now I have to do this workout and it's going to be a pain. No, we don't want that. As I mentioned before, the habit should enhance your life and not make it harder for you. What also helped me to make it much easier and to remove all the friction there is that I prepare my sport clothes for my workout in the morning already at the evening before. And what that does is that it makes it for me as easy as possible in the morning to just get going. I don't have to think about where are my running shoes, where are my workout clothes and all that, because it's already been prepared. And in that way, I was able to remove any friction. Could also be, for example, that you already prepare your coffee machine in the morning, that you just have to press a button and, remove all those little things that might cost you time and energy and motivation in the morning, in the evening, so you have it as easy as possible to start your day. My fourth tip is actually to start using a habit tracker. Having a habit tracker throughout this journey, I think, can be very beneficial, because we're talking about a period of 66 days, more than 3 months, so it's a lot of time to kind of lose yourself in the process. And to just have something that visualizes your process can be very helpful, at least helped me a lot. And a habit tracker can be anything. It could be, for example, that you have a post-it on your fridge where you make a little mark every day you woke up early. It could be some notes that you take on your phone. It could be a journal. It could be a calendar, but just use something where you're able to visualize your process, because that really helps in order not to fall back and to remember why you're doing this and all those things. I used a journal as a physical habit tracker, and that really helped me to kind of remember why I started it, and I kind of wrote on a page on how I felt that morning. What this journal did to me was that it served as a physical habit tracker for once, but it also made me able to reflect and to remember why I started this in the first place, in what kind of stage I am, how I feel moving forward, and all those things. But more importantly, it built some evidence of process, and that really helped me to realize, okay, I'm building something here. Every day I'm moving closer to my goal, and I think I wouldn't have had that feeling if I wouldn't have a habit tracker that was helping me to kind of understand where I'm heading. But now, if you're still watching, we made it to tip 5, and that was actually the biggest game changer for me in my morning routine journey. And when I now tell you what that tip is, you might think, that doesn't sound like a big thing. But trust me, it was the one thing that actually helped me to go from attempts to actually successful implementation. And it's simple as it sounds. It's just about get out of your bed immediately. Because think about it. The only thing that stands between you and getting up is actually getting out of your physical bed. And if you do that right as the alarm goes off, and you stand next to your bed like literally 10 seconds after your alarm goes off, you have done the hardest part of the whole day. So everything that comes after will just be easy, because you have done the hardest part. And if you stand already next to your bed, you will not have those thoughts of like, okay, I might turn around, I would snooze at my alarm. You've done the hardest part. So now you got up, so now you're awake. So now you can also start, doing your thing and start your morning routine. So So just try to not think about it and just jump out of bed immediately and do something that it makes it easy for you. I don't know, I have a very high bed, so I don't need to, lift myself out of the bed every morning, but I can just literally swing out of bed and I'm just standing there. And it's a weird experience because when you wake up, I mean, depending on how deep your sleep is at the moment the alarm goes off, but when you're then kind of sleepy standing next to the bed, it's kind of a weird feeling. But this was really the absolute game changer. If you just manage to do that little thing every morning, there's nothing standing between you and your consistent morning routine. It's just simple as that. All right, so that was my 5 tips on how to get started, and that really helped me in order to be consistent. I really hope that you were able to take away something from that. So please, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me or to put your opinion down in the comments. I would love to engage with you. And see you in the next one.